The Empire had ruled the Andromeda sector for 3,000 years. Their ships were made of living crystal that could travel faster than light. Their laws controlled 17 different alien species across hundreds of planets. Their prison stations floated in the dark spaces between stars, holding anyone who broke Imperial rules. Commander Al had served the Empire for 200 years, and he believed he was a fair officer who treated all prisoners equally. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The human freighter was called the Wandering Star. It was a small ship, old and patched together, the kind of vessel that struggling families used to make a living among the stars. Commander Al's patrol cruiser had caught it near the nebula, a cloud of purple gas where smugglers often tried to hide. The ship's cargo hold was full of medical supplies, vaccines and medicines meant for a colony that the Empire had placed under quarantine. The quarantine meant no ships could visit that colony. They had declared this because of a political dispute, not because of any disease. But 3,000 people on that colony were sick and dying from a fever that could easily be cured. The crew of the Wandering Star had decided to break the law to save those lives. Commander Al did not care about their reasons. Law was law. He ordered his soldiers to board the human ship and arrest everyone on board. The boarding went smoothly. Humans were not known for fighting. They were a young species, having discovered faster-than-light travel only 40 years ago. In that short time, they had spread to dozens of colonies and joined the galactic community as traders and explorers. They were small compared to most species, soft-skinned and fragile. Commander Al did not think much of them. His soldiers brought the prisoners to the processing center aboard his station. There were 8 humans in total. 5 adults stood in a line, their hands bound with energy cuffs. The captain was a man named Daniel Wright, tall for a human with gray in his brown hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of hard years and harder choices. Beside him stood Carlos and Maria Martinez, a married couple who served as the ship's engineers. Then came Price, a young woman with red hair who handled communications, and old Samuel Cooper, the ship's doctor who had organized this mission of mercy. But it was the other 3 prisoners that made Commander Al pause. 3 children stood separately from the adults, guarded by 2 soldiers. The oldest was a boy of 12 named Leo Martinez, son of Carlos and Maria. He stood straight and tried to look brave, but his hands were shaking. Behind him was his twin sister Sophia, the same age but smaller, with tears running down her face. And clutching Sophia's hand was the youngest, Wright, the captain's daughter, only 8 years old. She was crying quietly, looking at her father with desperate eyes. Daniel Wright stepped forward and the soldiers raised their weapons. He stopped but spoke firmly to Commander Al. "The children have nothing to do with this. They were just traveling with their parents. Let them go." Commander Al studied the human captain with his multifaceted crystal eyes. All persons aboard a vessel engaged in illegal activity are subject to detention. This is standard procedure. "They are children," Daniel said, his voice rising. "The oldest is 12, the youngest is 8. You cannot put children in prison." The commander made a gesture that humans would not recognize as dismissive. Juveniles of all species are housed separately for their own safety. They will be given adequate food and rest surfaces. They will remain in detention until the tribunal decides your fate. Maria Martinez pushed forward, her face pale with fear. "How long? How long until this tribunal?" 15 standard rotations," Commander Al replied. "Approximately 18 of your Earth days." Carlos grabbed his wife as she nearly collapsed. 18 days. You want to keep our children locked in cells for 18 days. The commander did not understand their distress. 18 days was a short detention by standards. The cells were clean and functional. The children would not be harmed or mistreated. This was simply how the justice system worked. Every species understood this. But Commander Al had never truly understood humans. The adults were taken to one section of the detention block. The children were taken to another. Wright screamed for her father as the soldiers led her away. Daniel lunged against his restraints, and it took 3 soldiers to hold him down. Leo Martinez shouted that he would protect his sister, that the aliens should let her go and keep him instead. Sophia just cried, reaching for her mother until she disappeared around a corner. Commander Al watched all of this with confusion. He had processed thousands of prisoners over his long career. He had seen species beg and threaten and bargain, but he had never seen adults react this way to the detention of juveniles. Among the young ones were valued but not precious. They were simply the next generation, important but not sacred. Humans, he would soon learn, were very different. The cells were small rooms with transparent barriers instead of bars. Each cell had a sleep platform, a waste facility, and a nutrition dispenser built into the wall. The lighting was harsh and constant because did not need darkness to rest. The temperature was comfortable for crystalline beings, but cold for human children. Wright curled up on her sleep platform and pulled the thin blanket over her head. She could hear Sophia crying in the cell next to hers and Leo packing back and forth in the cell beyond that. She wanted her father. She wanted to go home. She did not understand why the crystal aliens were so angry or why she had to stay in this cold room. She was 8 years old, and she was alone and afraid. In his cell, Daniel Wright sat with his back against the wall and his hands clenched into fists. He was not a violent man. He had spent his life as a trader, flying cargo between colonies, trying to make an honest living for himself and his daughter. His wife had died 3 years ago from the same fever that was now killing people on the quarantined colony. That was why he had agreed to this mission, why he had risked everything to bring medicine to strangers. Now his daughter was locked in a cell somewhere on the station, and he could do nothing to help her. But Daniel Wright had one small hope. Before the soldiers had taken their equipment, Price had managed to send a distress signal. It was a tight beam transmission aimed at Earth, encoded with emergency protocols that would flag it as highest priority. The signal would take 6 days to reach home. Help might take another 10 days to arrive. His daughter would spend at least 16 days in that cell, alone and scared. Daniel closed his eyes and made a silent promise. Whoever had made this decision, whoever had looked at 3 human children and decided to lock them away, would learn what a terrible mistake they had made. Humanity was coming, and humanity did not forgive those who hurt their children. The distress signal traveled through space at the speed of light, bouncing between relay stations that humans had built over 40 years of expansion. It crossed empty void and passed through nebulas of glowing gas. It slipped past patrol ships and trading vessels, invisible and urgent, carrying its desperate message toward Earth. 6 days after Price pressed the transmit button, the signal reached the communications array orbiting humanity's home world. The officer on duty that night was a young man named Park. He had been working the late shift, monitoring routine traffic and drinking his 3rd cup of coffee, when his console lit up with priority alerts. The signal carried emergency codes that he had only seen in training exercises. He sat up straight, spilling coffee across his desk, and began decoding the message. 5 minutes later, he was running down the corridor toward his commander's office. By morning, the message had reached Earth Central Command. By afternoon, it had reached the office of Ambassador Gregory Cole aboard the diplomatic vessel Unity's Hope, currently stationed near the Galactic Council headquarters. By evening, every major news network on Earth was broadcasting the same story. Human children imprisoned by alien empire, 3 young ones locked in cells, parents helpless to save them. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Gregory Cole stood in his office aboard Unity's Hope, watching the feeds from Earth with growing alarm. He had served as humanity's ambassador to the galaxy for 12 years. He was 63 years old, with silver hair and a calm face that rarely showed emotion. He had negotiated treaties, resolved disputes, and built relationships with dozens of alien species. He was known for his patience and wisdom. But as he watched the images of Wright, Leo Martinez, and Sofia Martinez being led to their cells, something cold and hard settled in his chest, something he had not felt in many years. He remembered his own daughter, now grown with children of her own. He remembered the fear he had felt when she was sick as a child, the desperate need to protect her from anything that might cause her harm. Every human parent knew that feeling. Every human being understood it on a level deeper than thought or reason. They had made a terrible mistake. They just did not know it yet. Gregory immediately contacted the Galactic Council and requested an emergency session to discuss the detention. The Council's automated system scheduled his request for 3 days later, the earliest available time. Gregory was not willing to wait 3 days. He began making calls. The first call went to Elder Mother of the collective. There were furry beings who lived in family groups and valued community above all else. They had been humanity's first alien friends, fascinated by human music and art. Elder Mother listened to Gregory's explanation and immediately agreed to sponsor an emergency session. The second call went to High Speaker Horn of the Federation. There were logical beings who valued fairness and proper procedure. They had strong trade relationships with humanity and respected human engineering. High Speaker Horn agreed that the detention of children without due cause warranted immediate attention. The third call went to Click Voice Stone of the Assembly. There were beings who communicated through complex patterns of sound and movement. They had fought alongside humans against pirates in the outer territories and considered humanity to be honorable allies. Click Voice Stone agreed to support the emergency session. Within hours, Gregory had enough support to force an immediate council meeting, but he knew that diplomacy alone might not be enough. They were proud and ancient. They would not respond well to being told they had done something wrong. So Gregory made one more call, this one to Admiral at Earth Central Command. Admiral was a small woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She commanded humanity's combined fleet, every warship and carrier that protected human colonies across the stars. When Gregory explained the situation, her face grew very still. "How many children?" she asked. 3, ages 8, 10, and 12. "And they won't release them. They consider it standard procedure. They don't understand why we're upset." Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke in a voice that carried no emotion at all. "Ambassador, I have already received 17,000 volunteer applications in the last 6 hours. Parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, people who have never served a day in uniform. They all want to go get those children." Gregory nodded slowly. "I'm trying to resolve this through diplomatic channels." "I understand, and I hope you succeed." The Admiral's eyes hardened. "But if you don't, Ambassador, I want you to know that every ship I have is fueling up right now. Every soldier I command is ready to move. We will not leave those children in alien cells. We will not abandon them, whatever it takes." "Whatever it takes," Gregory repeated. On Earth, the reaction grew stronger with every passing hour. Protests formed outside trade offices in every major city. People who had never cared about galactic politics suddenly demanded action. Parents held their own children close and imagined what it would feel like to have them taken away, locked in cold cells by aliens who did not understand or care. The anger was not political. It was not calculated. It was something older and deeper, something built into human beings over millions of years of evolution. Protect the young, save the children, whatever the cost. News reporters interviewed psychologists and historians, trying to explain the intensity of the reaction. They talked about biological imperatives and social bonds. They discussed how human societies throughout history had judged themselves by how they treated their most vulnerable members. They pointed out that crimes against children were considered the worst offenses in almost every human culture. But none of these explanations captured the simple truth. Humans loved their children with a fierce and absolute love. They would die for them. They would kill for them. They would burn down empires and tear apart the galaxy itself to keep them safe. The Empire had existed for 3,000 years. It had conquered species and controlled territories across half a galaxy. Its fleets were vast, its technology advanced, its power unquestioned. But none of that would matter if they did not release those children. Back on Station 7, the three young prisoners had no idea that the galaxy was beginning to shake because of them. Wright had stopped crying and now sat silently in her cell, staring at the wall. Leo Martinez had tried everything he could think of to break out, pressing buttons and pulling at panels, but nothing worked. Sofia Martinez had curled up on her sleep platform and refused to move. Commander Al checked on them once during his patrol. He noted that they were alive and unharmed. He did not notice the emptiness in his eyes or the desperation in Leo's movements or the way Sofia had stopped responding to sounds. He did not understand that human children needed more than food and shelter. They needed comfort. They needed love. They needed their parents. The commander filed his report and moved on to other duties. In 15 days, the tribunal would meet. The adult humans would be found guilty and fined or imprisoned. The children would be released to whatever human authority came to collect them. This was simply how things worked. He had no idea that humanity was already on its way, and when they arrived, they would not be asking politely. The Galactic Council Chamber was the largest constructed space in the known universe. It was a sphere carved from a single asteroid, polished until it gleamed like black glass. Seating rose in tiers around a central platform where speakers could address the assembled representatives of 47 different species. Lights floated in the air, adjusting themselves to illuminate whoever was speaking. The chamber could hold 10,000 beings, and today it was nearly full. Ambassador Gregory Cole walked to the central platform with measured steps. He wore his formal diplomatic uniform, dark blue with silver trim, the flag of United Earth displayed on his shoulder. His face showed nothing of the storm raging inside him. He had learned long ago to keep his emotions hidden during negotiations. But today would test that control like never before. Across the platform stood High Arbiter of the Empire. The High Arbiter was an impressive being, nearly 3 meters tall, composed entirely of living crystal that shifted colors with mood and thought. Right now, glowed a pale, irritated yellow, clearly annoyed at being called to this emergency session. The chamber fell silent as Elder Mother rose to speak. Her soft fur rippled as she moved, and her large eyes blinked slowly. This emergency session of the Galactic Council has been called to address concerns raised by the human delegation regarding the detention of human citizens by the Empire. Ambassador Cole, please present your concerns. Gregory stepped forward. His voice was calm and clear, designed to carry to every corner of the vast chamber. Honored representatives, I come before you today to discuss a matter of grave importance to humanity. 8 days ago, a human freighter called the Wandering Star was detained by forces for carrying medical supplies to a quarantined colony. The crew was arrested and taken to Station 7 to await tribunal. High Arbiter pulsed with impatience. This is a routine matter of Imperial law enforcement. There is no need for council involvement. Gregory continued as if the High Arbiter had not spoken. Among the detained crew were 3 children, Wright, age 8, Leo Martinez, age 12, Sofia Martinez, age 12. These children are currently being held in detention cells, alone and separated from their parents, for no crime other than being present on the ship. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Several delegates leaned forward in their seats. I have one question for the High Arbiter, Gregory said, turning to face directly. Can you confirm that these 3 human children are currently imprisoned in detention cells aboard your station? His crystal form flickered with confusion. Imprisoned is not the correct term. They are being housed in juvenile detention facilities, separated from adult prisoners for their own protection. This is standard procedure across the Empire. In locked cells, Gregory clarified, unable to leave, unable to see their parents for 15 days. That is the standard detention period before tribunal, yes. Gregory nodded slowly. Then he activated the chamber's display system using a small device in his hand. Above the central platform, holographic images appeared. 3 children, their faces visible through the transparent barriers of their cells. Right, wrapped in a thin blanket, her eyes red from crying. Leo Martinez, standing at his cell barrier, hands pressed against it, looking desperate. Sofia Martinez, curled in a ball on her sleep platform, not moving. The chamber went very quiet. Among humans, Gregory said, his voice dropping lower, forcing the delegates to listen carefully, children are not simply juveniles. They are not just the next generation. They are sacred. They represent everything we hope for, everything we fight for, everything we are willing to die for. He paused, letting his words sink in. Every human culture, across every continent of our world, throughout every era of our history, has held one truth above all others. One absolute rule that cannot be broken, cannot be bent, cannot be ignored. Gregory looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as he could. You do not harm children. You do not imprison children. You do not make children suffer for the actions of adults. High Arbiter's form shifted to an angry orange. The Empire has harmed no one. The juvenile facilities are adequate for biological needs. The children are fed and sheltered. They are not being tortured or abused. They are alone, Gregory said, and now his voice cracked slightly with emotion he could no longer fully contain. They are scared. They are calling for their parents and no one answers. They do not understand why they are being punished for something they did not do. He gestured at the floating images. That little girl is 8 years old. 8. She has been locked in a cell for 8 days. She cries herself to sleep every night. Is that not harm, High Arbiter? Is that not cruelty? Elder Mother spoke softly from her seat. Ambassador Cole, perhaps you could explain to the Council why this matter is so urgent. Many species detain juveniles as part of legal proceedings. It is not pleasant, but it is sometimes necessary. Gregory turned to face her. Elder Mother, let me try to explain something that may be difficult for other species to understand. Humans have a biological response to threats against our young. It is not something we can control. It is not something we can reason away. When we see children in danger, something changes inside us. We become capable of things we would never otherwise consider. He pointed at the images above him. Right now, every human being who has seen these images is experiencing that response. Parents are holding their own children and imagining what it would feel like to have them taken away. Adults who have no children of their own are feeling the same protective rage. Our entire species is united in a way that almost never happens. Click voice stone of the assembly made a complex series of sounds that the translation systems rendered as a question. You speak of your species becoming united. United to do what? Gregory was silent for a moment. Then he spoke carefully. High Arbiter, I must be very clear about what I am going to say next. This is not a threat. This is a warning, given with complete honesty, because I believe you deserve to know what is coming. The chamber grew even more quiet. Right now, the human fleet is mobilizing. Admiral has ordered every available ship to begin moving toward space. This was not my order. This was not the decision of any politician or diplomat. The moment word reached Earth that human children were imprisoned, our military began preparing for war. Sform flared bright red. You would go to war over 3 juveniles. We would go to war over 1, Gregory said simply. We would burn worlds over 1 child crying alone in a cell. This is not rational. We know it is not rational, but it is who we are. It is what we are, and nothing you or I or anyone else says will change it. He stepped closer to the delegation. You have made an enemy of every human being alive, not your empire, not your military, every single human. Because when children are threatened, we stop thinking. We stop calculating risks and benefits. We become something ancient and terrible, something that evolution built into us over millions of years. Gregory's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but in the silent chamber, everyone heard him clearly. Release those children, High Arbiter. Release them now. Or everything I have spent 12 years building will burn, and your empire will learn what happens when you threaten humanity's young. The Galactic Council chamber erupted into chaos after Ambassador Cole finished speaking. Delegates shouted questions and demands in dozens of languages. Translation systems struggled to keep up with the flood of voices. Some representatives called for calm, while others demanded explanations. The floating lights flickered as they tried to illuminate multiple speakers at once. High Arbiter stood at the center of the storm, crystal form flashing between red anger and yellow confusion. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 3,000 years. No species had ever threatened them with war over something so minor as juvenile detention. The very idea seemed insane. Elder Mother finally restored order by activating a harmonic tone that cut through the noise. The chamber slowly fell silent as delegates returned to their seats. Ambassador Cole said, her voice carefully neutral, "You have made very serious statements. Before we proceed, I must ask you to clarify. Are you saying that humanity will actually go to war with the Empire over 3 children?" Gregory stood straight and answered without hesitation, "Yes. Even knowing that the fleet outnumbers yours significantly. Even knowing that such a war could cost millions of human lives." "Yes." His large eyes blinked slowly. "This is difficult to understand. Surely your species must recognize the strategic foolishness of such a decision." Gregory nodded. "We recognize it, we understand it, and it changes nothing." He turned to address the full chamber. "Let me tell you a story from human history. Perhaps it will help you understand." He clasped his hands behind his back, a pose he often used when teaching. Thousands of years ago, on our home world, there was a great war. Millions of soldiers fought across continents. Cities were reduced to ashes. Entire nations were destroyed. It was one of the worst conflicts in our history. The chamber listened in silence. But do you know what event from that war is most remembered? What incident is taught to every child, spoken of with the greatest horror, used as the ultimate example of evil? Gregory paused. It was not the battles. It was not the bombs dropped on cities. It was not the millions of soldiers who died. What we remember most, what we consider the greatest crime of that terrible time, was the harm done to children, the way certain groups targeted and killed the young ones. He looked directly at High Arbiter. "That is who we are, High Arbiter, a species that measures evil by what is done to children, a species that will forgive almost anything except harm to the young. You may think of your detention facilities as adequate and reasonable. We see them as prisons for innocent children, and that is something we cannot accept." Clickvoice Stone spoke again. "Ambassador, I have worked with humans for many years. I have seen your soldiers fight with courage and skill, but I have also seen them act with restraint and mercy. How can the same species that shows such control also threaten total war over this matter?" Gregory considered the question carefully before answering. "Because our restraint and our mercy come from the same place as our rage. We care deeply about life. We value every person, every being, every child. That caring is what makes us kind, but it is also what makes us dangerous when those we care about are threatened." He spread his hands. "Most of the time, humans are reasonable. We negotiate, we compromise, we find peaceful solutions, but there are certain lines that cannot be crossed. Certain acts that trigger something older than civilization, older than reason itself. Threatening children is one of those acts." High Arbiter finally spoke. "You speak of biological responses and ancient instincts, But surely your leaders can control your population. Surely your government can prevent war even if the masses demand it. Gregory laughed softly, though there was no humor in the sound. High Arbiter, you misunderstand human society. Our leaders do not rule against the will of the people. When every human being demands action, our government acts. When parents across 1,000 colonies cry out for their children to be protected, our military moves. He shook his head. There is no one who can stop this. No politician would dare try. Any leader who told humanity to accept children being imprisoned by aliens would be removed from power within hours. This is not about policy or strategy. This is about who we are at our most basic level. The representative, High Speaker Horn, rose to speak. His thin form swayed slightly as he chose his words with care. Ambassador Cole, the Federation has always valued logic and reason. What you describe sounds like a species ruled by emotion rather than thought. How can we trust such a species to be stable partners in galactic affairs? Gregory turned to face him. High Speaker, you ask a fair question. The answer is this. Our emotions make us unpredictable in certain situations, yes, but they also make us loyal beyond measure. Once humanity considers another species to be family, we protect them with the same fierce love we show our own children. He gestured around the chamber. Ask the who we defended against raiders when it cost us ships and lives. Ask the who we stood beside against enemies that outnumbered us. Ask any species that has truly become our friend. When we love completely. When we fight for those we love, we fight without limit. Gregory's voice softened. We know we are young in this galaxy. We know we are sometimes strange and confusing to older species. But I promise you this. If you earn humanity's friendship, if you become part of our extended family, we will stand beside you forever. We will protect your children as if they were our own. He turned back to the delegation. They had the chance to become our friends. Instead, you chose to imprison human children. You chose to make enemies of a species that would have given you loyalty and protection beyond measure. High Arbiter's form had shifted to a deep blue, indicating uncertainty and concern. Ambassador, what exactly do you want from the Empire? I want those 3 children released immediately. I want them returned to their parents within the hour. I want the Empire to acknowledge that human children are never to be detained except in the most extreme circumstances, and only with immediate notification to human authorities. And the adult crew, they broke Imperial law. Gregory considered this. The adults can face your tribunal. They knew the risks when they chose to run your blockade, but the children go free. That is not negotiable. That is not something I can compromise on even if I wanted to. Was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke slowly. I must consult with Imperial Command. This is not a decision I can make alone. Gregory nodded. Then consult quickly, High Arbiter, because while we stand here talking, human ships are getting closer. Human soldiers are preparing for battle. Human parents are looking at images of those 3 children and feeling their hearts break. He looked up at the holographic images still floating above the platform. Wright's tear-stained face, Leo Martinez's desperate eyes, Sophia Martinez's curled and motionless form. Those children have become symbols to my species, symbols of everything we fight for and everything we protect. Every hour they spend in those cells, human anger grows. Every day that passes, peaceful resolution becomes less likely. Gregory Cole met the High Arbiter's crystalline eyes. I am giving you a chance to end this without bloodshed. I am giving you a chance to release 3 children and walk away with your empire intact. Please, High Arbiter, take that chance. Because if you do not, if those children spend one more night alone in your cells, I cannot promise that I or anyone else will be able to stop what comes next. High Arbiter from the Council Chamber to contact the Imperial Command. The session was declared in temporary recess, and delegates began speaking quietly among themselves in small groups. Ambassador Gregory Cole remained on the central platform, watching the holographic images of the three children that still floated above him. Elder Mother approached him slowly, her soft fur rippling as she moved. She was old even by standards, having served on the Galactic Council for over 200 years. She had seen species rise and fall. She had witnessed wars and peace treaties and everything in between. But she had never seen anything quite like this. Ambassador Cole, she said quietly, I have studied humanity for many decades. I believed I understood your species reasonably well. Your art and music have brought joy to my people. Your traders have been honest partners. Your soldiers have been brave allies. Gregory turned to face her, but this, gestured at the chamber, at the tense delegates, at the images of the imprisoned children. This reaction is beyond anything I expected. You spoke of biological responses and ancient instincts. I thought perhaps you were exaggerating for effect. I was not. His large eyes studied him carefully. I am beginning to understand that. Ambassador, do you truly believe that humanity would go to war over these three children, risk millions of lives, potentially lose that war? Gregory was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke softly. Elder Mother, let me tell you something personal. I have a daughter. She is grown now with children of her own. But I remember when she was small. I remember holding her in my arms, feeling her tiny heart beat against my chest. His voice grew thick with emotion. If someone had taken her from me, if someone had locked her in a cell and told me I could not see her for 18 days, I would have burned the entire universe to get her back. Not because it was logical, not because it made strategic sense, because she was my child and nothing else mattered. He gestured at the images above them. Wright's father feels that same way right now. Carlos and Maria Martinez feel it for their twins, and every human who sees these images feels an echo of it, a shadow of that desperate, absolute need to protect the young. Nodded slowly. Among we also love our children deeply, but I do not believe we would go to war over three juveniles when the cost would be so high. That is the difference between our species, Gregory said. For humans, there is no cost too high when children are at stake. No price we would not pay, no sacrifice we would not make. He paused. It may not be rational, it may not be wise, but it is who we are. 40 minutes passed. Delegates grew restless. Some began to wonder if they were deliberately stalling, hoping that time would cool human anger. Others speculated about what Imperial Command might be saying to High Arbiter. Then returned to the chamber. The crystalline being's colors had changed dramatically. The angry reds and confused yellows were gone. Now glowed a subdued blue, almost purple, colors that indicated uncertainty and perhaps even something like embarrassment. The Imperial Command has reconsidered the detention of the human juveniles, announced. The chamber fell completely silent. The children will be released immediately to Ambassador Cole's custody. They will be transported to Unity's Hope within the hour. A wave of relief swept through Gregory, so strong that he nearly staggered, but he forced himself to remain composed. And the detention protocols for human children in the future. His form pulsed with something that might have been discomfort. The Empire will consult with human authorities before any future detention involving human juveniles. We were not aware of the significance that humans place on the treatment of their young. This was a cultural misunderstanding, not a deliberate provocation. Gregory nodded. We accept that explanation, High Arbiter, and we appreciate the Empire's willingness to resolve this matter peacefully. He meant it too. They had made a mistake born of ignorance, not malice. They had not understood what they were doing when they locked those children in cells. Now they understood, and they had chosen to make things right. That was enough. It had to be enough. 6 hours later, Ambassador Gregory Cole stood in the main docking bay of Unity's Hope as a shuttle approached. The bay was large enough to hold several small ships, with high ceilings and bright lights and the constant hum of life support systems. A small crowd had gathered to witness the moment. The shuttle landed smoothly, its doors opened, and 3 children walked out into the light. Wright saw her father first. Daniel had been transported from Station 7 along with the rest of the adult crew, released pending tribunal. He stood at the front of the crowd, tears streaming down his face, arms open wide. She ran faster than she had ever run in her life, her small feet pounding against the deck plates, her arms reaching out. Daniel caught her and lifted her up, holding her so tight that she could barely breathe, but she did not care. She was safe. She was with her father. Nothing else mattered. Leo and Sofia Martinez found their parents in the crowd a moment later. Carlos and Maria grabbed their children and pulled them close, all 4 of them crying and laughing and speaking words that made no sense but communicated everything that needed to be said. They were together again. They were whole again. Gregory Cole watched the reunions with quiet satisfaction. He had spent 12 years building peace between humanity and the galaxy. He had worried that this crisis would destroy everything he had worked for. Instead, it had taught the galaxy something important about his species. Elder Mother appeared at his side. "Ambassador, I will recommend that this wisdom be added to the Galactic Council's official protocols. Let every species know that human children are to be treated with special care." Gregory nodded. "That would be appreciated, Elder Mother." Was quiet for a moment, watching the families embrace. Then she spoke softly. "I understand something now that I did not understand before. Your species is powerful not because of your technology or your military or your numbers. You are powerful because you love so completely. That love makes you vulnerable, yes, but it also makes you unstoppable." Gregory smiled slightly. "We have a saying on Earth, do not get between a parent and their child." A wise saying, agreed. As Unity's Hope prepared to leave space, the story spread across the galaxy. News networks on hundreds of worlds reported on the human children who had been imprisoned and the human response that had nearly started a war. Diplomats and scholars analyzed what it meant for galactic relations. Military strategists updated their assessments of humanity's willingness to fight. But the most important lesson was simpler than any analysis could capture. It spread through whispered conversations and official warnings, through diplomatic briefings and military protocols, until every species in the known universe understood one basic truth. Humans were strange. Humans were emotional. Humans were sometimes foolish and often unpredictable. But human children were sacred. Human children were protected by a love so fierce that it could shake the foundations of empires. Human children were untouchable. And any species that forgot that lesson, any being that threatened a human child, would face something far worse than diplomacy. They would face the full fury of a species that would sacrifice everything, risk everything, destroy everything, to keep their young ones safe. The galaxy had been warned, and the galaxy would remember.